Thank you for joining us. My name is Daniel Thomas. I'm the Chief Business Correspondent for the Financial Times in London. And would like to welcome you all to the Institute of Directors today for a summit on the future of business and how to harness diverse talent for the future. This is a cause close to my heart and close to the FT's sense of purpose. Indeed, this is a very good example of an area that makes absolute economic sense at the same time as being basically the right thing to do. The UK is facing a skills and productivity shortage, a fact that tallies badly with a worrying lack of diverse talent being encouraged to take positions at all levels in UK companies. And after some progress has been made in recent years, there is a real worry around plans on diversity, inclusion and ESG that will be put to one side as companies struggle into a recession. So lots to talk about and lots to think about, even as our politicians and our government discusses huge matters that will perhaps ripple down to even this matter as well. But first of all, some housekeeping. In the event of the fire alarm going off, exit the building and assemble on Waterloo Place. Today's sessions are being live streamed via Zoom. Captioning has been enabled and can be accessed via the Zoom link that was sent to all attendees by email prior to the event. The Wi-Fi network is IOD and the password is entrepreneur116, confusingly with a capital E, capital T and capital N. I'll leave you to work out which N perhaps. The disabled toilets are on the lower ground floor and can be accessed by the lift. During the Q&A sessions, and there will be Q&A at both the first panel and the third panel, so please do start thinking of some really great questions. But during those sessions, the IOD staff will be on hand with a roaming mic. If you are selected, please wait for the mic to reach you and please state your name and organisation, and we'll go from there. If you have any other queries, I'm around, and so are the IOD staff as well. Everyone's wearing lanyards and badges and so on. Now, the work done by the IOD and the Commission today will be absolutely invaluable to the ongoing debate around this so hugely important topic. And with that, I will come straight to the point of the afternoon. We have a cracking first panel of speakers here to take us through how companies need to approach this idea of stewardship, I think, before the individual breakout sessions to which you're all invited. And I'd like to introduce them all now before inviting them to come to the stage in turn before a more general Q&A, hopefully at the end if we have time. So we have Lord Shinquin, a British Conservative politician and member of the House of Lords. Matthew Layton, a former General Managing Partner at Clifford Chance. Stephanie Boyce, past President of the Law Society. And last but not least, we have Jonathan Geldart, the IOD's Director General. And to kick things off, I'd like to invite him to the stage. Please, Jonathan, come up here.
Thanks, Dan. And I'll start with how I start a lot of my speeches with, I'm sorry, I'm from Yorkshire. No apology for that, but the only problem with that is that you can always tell a Yorkshireman, but only once. So we do have an opinion, and that is, I'm not short of an opinion on this subject matter either. So I've prepared a short speech, but afterwards, later on in the session this afternoon, I'll certainly have something to say about what the IOD is doing and how important this subject matter is to us. So, as I said, good afternoon. It's an absolute delight to welcome you all here today. And we're looking at the future of business. And we mustn't underestimate what the enormity of that kind of task, the future of business. And you heard Dan earlier on talk about the economic uncertainty that we face as a country right now. There is, I guess, a risk that in all the turmoil that we're currently facing, ED&I is forgotten. And it's not because people want to, it's because in the turmoil, other things come at businesses that can potentially distract them from the things that are really important. And having said that, if we don't actually look at harnessing the full, broad potential that exists within the UK's diverse workforce, I worry for the economic health of the country. Because if you don't take things seriously, then they do come back to bite you. We know from all the evidence that we can see and we've outlined in the report, diverse organizations are tangibly more effective and creative As a result, they are likely to be more successful, in particularly at this time, resilient in difficult times. And goodness knows now is a time of difficulty. It's almost as if we've only just got over COVID to be hit by the current catastrophes of Ukraine, interest rates, and other aspects, of course, particularly now, literally of today with inflation going up again. The concerns that every individual householder has in the United Kingdom of the costs associated with living, and ever more concern for those people facing other challenges. And we know that the economy is changing. People say change is a constant, but it is changing at an unprecedented speed. And we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, bringing dramatic advances in technology, and of course it is doing it, and AI, and of course it is doing. But these changes present opportunities, but also risks for business. So as we look forward and think more about how we can have a more diverse suite of perspectives on business, and I include ours very much in the set. We are a mid-market business. The Institute of Directors is a business. I try and run it as the CEO. I have this wonderful title, the Director General, but I'm the CEO. So I am facing exactly the same issues as other mid-market businesses are across the UK. So I feel it very acutely, and it's a big building to heat, I can assure you. But there are answers out there in the workforce. And if you don't have a diverse approach to the way you operate as a board, the way you operate as a management team, and indeed throughout the business, you don't get the best results and the best answers. And sometimes, and I found this to my cost, that you don't always like the answers you get. But you still need to ask the questions. Because sometimes those answers will come from left field. They'll come from unthought of locations. And we need to be open to all of those different diverse thinkings in order to help us to think differently about the way we look forward. I'm going to quote McKinsey here. A report by McKinsey found that companies in the top quartile of gender diversity on executive teams were 25% more likely to experience above average profitability than peer companies in the fourth quartile. That's a big difference. So there's absolute evidence, and I can quote from other data sources, that would indicate almost wherever you look, be it diversity of gender or of access, of ethnicity, of any type of diversity, of thinking, of neurodiversity, it makes economic sense to do the right thing in terms of looking at EDI. We just can't afford to miss out on the talent. Another figure that we quoted recently, and has been since quoted by the government, is on the number of people that have simply left the workforce for long-term sick. And whilst COVID, in some ways, has opened up opportunities that maybe it couldn't have done for those people who are finding it more easy to, if they're carers, to come back into work from a home environment, it still has tremendous impact on so many people. So for the first time ever, there are more vacancies than there are unemployed people. So we have to look at harnessing the talent that is available across the United Kingdom. Labour and skills shortages continue to be widespread, and that goes from manufacturing to hospitality. And we've just, I don't know if you've seen the recent breaking news in terms of responses from business, and we are amongst that set, talking about the increases in business rates. There's a huge amount of impact coming into down the track to us all. And we're struggling. We are struggling the same as any other mid-market business to, if you like, to find the talent we need to grow. And that is the case for UK PLC and UK Limited. But embedding ED&I into business strategies is a key lever that companies can use to overcome some of these challenges. An equitable, inclusive workforce is increasingly an essential component of our organization's employee value proposition. It's part of what we at the IOD look to as well. So according to research this year by the workplace training company Talent LMS, 77% of Gen Zers consider it important that their company supports diversity, equality, and inclusion groups. And we reference this in the report. That's partly why, if you like, last year we thought very deeply about this, and why this year, in March, we launched this commission under the, if you like, the aegis of the IOD. Now, that is really about helping develop best practice, and there are suggestions we make, recommendations we make in the report, to ensuring that business can not only attract the best talent, but also to help that talent flourish in the workforce. And a key task for this commission was to move from the why to the how. And certainly, that's the most important thing for the board of a business. We kind of know why, but often we don't know how. And having, we hope, these insights and these recommendations in the report will help people focus on the how, and also the case studies. I hope that you'll look at the case studies, and there are many we could have included, there just happens to be a few that we have, that we know diversity is good for business. And I suppose our mission in this commission is to support businesses to identify and implement effective strategies to build inclusive organizations. So it's about turning the talk into concrete actions. The guidance includes specific recommendations for businesses across the key themes of data, recruitment, progression, workplace, culture, and senior leadership, as I said earlier, brought to life by a few case studies, but you will know of many more. And I would encourage you to look at other case studies that might be sparked from your reading of this report, and to think and consult with those organizations about how their learning can support the wider learning of business generally. We are incredibly grateful to Lord Shinquin. Lord Shinquin has been a regular supporter in this endeavour throughout the time that the Commission has been operating, and I have to say has been giving us some very good input as to how we can look more effectively at the way we respond to diversity and inclusion in the IOD. So thank you very much, Lord Shinquin. And for the expert sharing of the Commission. And I think that it's been a real lesson for us, and I have to say a challenge for us to have your insightful and sometimes very specific challenges. And I hope we've been able to rise to those challenges. So the summit, and we grandly call this a summit, and the publication of the practical guidance for business doesn't represent the end of our work in this arena. So today is a call for action and to action for business to seize the moment, to drive forward this agenda to build a more successful suite of resilient and successful organizations. And I would say this, wouldn't I? We are on hand as the IOD to help you navigate the changing workplace and to create an inclusive environment in the workplace that not only helps retain and attract staff, but also increases productivity and contributes to business success. So really we would, and I would, warmly invite you to join us on the journey. We are just faltering forward ourselves. We have the opportunity through our core membership and what I'd call the IOD diaspora, where we've got over 70,000 followers on LinkedIn, and those followers are acutely interested. We know that from the engagement numbers in this subject. So we have an opportunity to work with you on making a difference, and I look forward to a very fruitful and engaging conversation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and I'd now like to invite Lord Shinquin up to the stage to address the audience, and as Jonathan said, so instrumental in what we're doing here today. So thank you very much.
Dan, thank you very much for that introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. It's fantastic to see so many people of such seniority showing your commitment to harnessing diverse talent for success. Can I start by thanking my fellow commissioners, whom I've been so honoured to lead over the last year. I'm deeply grateful to each of them for being so generous with their time, their expertise, and their extensive experience of being business leaders at the very top of their game. And my thanks, of course, must go to the IOD as well, because the fact is, no one forced them to lead this debate. And it's a credit to them and to Jonathan Geldof, the Director General, from whom we've just heard, that they have chosen to do so. In hosting this summit and producing this white paper and another more detailed white paper focused on policy to be published shortly, they've helped set the agenda in a truly informed, innovative, and business-friendly way. The result is a white paper that I hope you're going to read that has been developed for business, by business, and crucially, with the direct and, as Jonathan said, challenging input on an equal basis of commissioners with lived experience of the protected characteristics covered by the Commission's work: disability, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation. I cannot emphasize enough how heartening an experience that has been for me. Why? Because I am used, as one of the UK's 14 million disabled people, to being marginalised, stereotyped, even mocked in the street for my disability, as happened in the quaint Murray market town of Forres only recently. Being a peer of the realm affords no protection from prejudice. That incident, which I know is not uncommon for disabled people, was a poignant reminder for me that in 2022, we're still so far from equality. It's a lovely theory, but to make it a practical reality requires power. And at the moment, we still don't really have any. The spending power of disabled people, disabled households, is estimated to be over £250 billion. Big deal if I can't get into the nearest pret-a-manger a few hundred yards from Parliament because it isn't wheelchair accessible. Why, I ask myself, more than a quarter of a century since the introduction of the Disability Discrimination Act, is that still seen as acceptable? The answer is simple. We don't have the power to change the law to ensure I'm treated as an equal customer. I'd like to invite you to consider why, as I approach my 7th birthday as a member of the House of Lords, why I consider chairing this commission to have been probably the single most important thing I've done since I first swore my oath of allegiance to Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Now, you might well think, surely I have power as a parliamentarian. But if I've learned anything from almost 7 years in the wonderful, if rather detached and totally unrepresentative institution that is the House of Lords, it is that discrimination is sadly alive and well and living at the heart of a British establishment. Not malign, not even necessarily deliberate, but no less systematic and indeed soul-destroying for that. This was really brought home to me earlier this year when I had major surgery. Now, I'm not at all fazed by the possibility of dying during surgery, the risk of which is significantly higher in my case due to complications arising from my disability. My greatest fear was that I would survive, but in an incapacitated state that would prevent me, even if only temporarily, from contributing to House of Lords business and thereby not qualify for the Lord's attendance allowance, my only source of income. I said in Hansard, following my operation, as far as the House of Lords was concerned, I might just as well have been dead. No support, no financial security, no appreciation even of a moral duty to be a beacon of best practice, for the simple reason that it is effectively presumed that every member of the Lords is a person of independent means, i.e. wealthy, is not disabled, and has outside interests, that is, another source of income. It's a system that was designed by wealthy, overwhelmingly white, non-disabled men for wealthy, overwhelmingly white, non-disabled men. The Lord's attendance allowance, which is not a salary, is jealously guarded because just as with the denial of equal suffrage to women until only less than 100 years ago, the status quo suits the vast majority of members, who of course are not disabled. Indeed, despite there being around 14 million disabled people in this country, as I've already mentioned, of approximately 800 peers, there are probably no more than 12 of us with lived experience of a non-age-related disability. It is an absolute scandal. It's also par for the course. And it's relevant to our discussion today because it highlights the discrimination that results from a deficit of lived experience, which then goes on to inform policy decisions, including on whether to support business, on equity, diversity, and inclusion, ED&I. On a more positive note, it means, conversely, that I draw so much hope and encouragement from a community which is choosing, as today is witness, to take a very different and exciting path. To whom do I refer? To you, to business, where yes, you also suffer from a deficit of lived experience, but at least you recognize it and are choosing to move in a different direction towards equality of opportunity. That is key to our ever becoming equal citizens in more than name only. And that is what this white paper is ultimately about. So I urge business to keep faith with the principles of ED&I, as I echo what Jonathan Geldart shared with us in his opening remarks. And most importantly, with people with protected characteristics who, like me, depend on you. Ignoring those politicians whose limited lived experience means they will never understand the need for ED&I and instead will conflate it with a war on woke as justification for reversing hard-won progress towards equality. Please, push back. If the turmoil over the last few weeks has taught us anything, it is surely that a hands-free approach has consequences. We cannot afford to go backwards on harnessing diverse talent. As the white paper makes clear, the future success of business depends on our moving forward together. So thank you to the IOD and my fellow commissioners for showing us all how it can be done. Now it's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lord Shinkman, for those powerful remarks. And, you know, at a time when the Prime Minister is, like I say, talking only a mile or so away and, you know, about other matters. And it's striking how little this conversation has come up in her first three weeks or 6 weeks, I should say now. Feels shorter. Anyway, I'd now like to invite up our next speaker, Matthew Layton, who's a former global managing partner at Clifford Chance, to give us some thoughts about how the law society, the law sector is dealing with this sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and allow me to start by just thanking Lord Shinkman and the IOD for inviting me to be a member of the Commission and to be part of what has been very open and passionate discussions over the last 6 months. It has been a true privilege for me to be part of that Commission and participate in those discussions. I have to say, from a personal point of view, I have benefited hugely from the insight and wisdom and experience that my fellow commissioners have shared over that period of time. Lord Shinkman has asked me to speak today about some of my personal experiences as the global managing partner of Clifford Chance over the last 8 years. It's a role that I stepped down from in July, so these reflections are very much my personal reflections on that time. But I hope they'll provide some context and background to the recommendations in the Commission's paper on the important role of senior leadership in this journey for diversity and inclusion. As a law firm and a business which is really built on the talent and capabilities of its people, at Clifford Chance, I think we recognize that inclusion had to be a core intrinsic value if we were to have the creativity, the diversity, and the resilience that John mentioned earlier to drive our future success and growth. And when I came into the role in 2014 and looked to set out our new strategy at that point in time, we placed inclusion as a core foundational value of that strategy. We wanted it to be a value that ran through the very fabric of the firm. It was embedded in everything we did, collectively and individually, in our behaviors and the way we operated every day. And we knew we had a long way to go to try and achieve that. Equally, it was important that as a leadership group, we understood that that was a journey, and it was going to be a perpetual journey, one that we had to have responsibility for every single day. We recognized that we'd never get to the point where we would suddenly go, well, that's it. We've done it. We've created inclusion in the firm. That was never going to happen. So we thought about it in terms of building a campaign within the firm, a campaign for change. And it was a campaign that had to be led by myself and the other leaders within the firm. But it was also a campaign that we looked to ensure empowered everybody in the firm to play their part. And we built that campaign around 3 key pillars and priorities. First was change the rules. which meant we had to commit to constantly looking to challenge and improve the systems and structures and processes which have been built up over many, many years within the firm to ensure that they promote diversity and inclusion. And as a law firm, it was also important that we went beyond the firm and looked outside and embraced the opportunities that we had to influence and challenge laws and regulations which stand in the way of diversity and inclusion in the wider society. We also had to look at how we changed the culture within the firm. So how did we challenge the behaviors and the habits and the practices which stood in the way of equality of opportunity and equality of experience within the firm? And finally, we looked at how we could change the lived experience of every single person within the firm, including future members of the firm. And that was all about how we built a capacity and a greater understanding to deepen the awareness of everybody within the firm so we could create the opportunities for everyone to thrive as their true selves within the firm. So that was the ambition. It was an ambition to see inclusion lived and experienced every single day by every one of our team. And where that wasn't happening and wasn't the case, and there were plenty of situations where that was the case, we had to embrace the challenge and encourage people to speak up and to act to overcome the barriers that stood in the way. So some quick, I feel I'm speaking to a very experienced audience, but I want to just share some of the things that I really saw and learned throughout my time in that role, which I think form the context for many of the recommendations in the business white paper. I think it probably goes without saying that if we were going to progress on that journey together, it was absolutely critical that the leaders within the firm were actively and authentically demonstrating their commitment to the values every single day. To borrow a phrase which our wonderful Global Inclusion Director at CC, Tin and Brady, often uses, a value that remains unspoken is a secret. As leaders of the business, the teams needed to constantly hear and witness our genuine commitment to a truly inclusive culture. But at times that can be quite difficult. As leaders, we're fearful of making mistakes and missteps, saying the wrong thing. And as leaders, we're also, I think, tend to have a fear of revealing vulnerabilities about our lack of awareness or knowledge. But I believe, and I think all the commissioners also believe, that a willingness of leaders to acknowledge vulnerabilities and also to acknowledge shortcomings in awareness is an absolute critical part of building that trusted, authentic engagement with our teams within the business. So a key element of what we did at Clifford Chance was to make sure we created some safe spaces for those dialogues to occur. They weren't happening enough. And as part of that, the reverse mentoring program that we introduced was a real game changer for our leaders within the firm. I have to say I'm immensely grateful for everybody at the firm who stepped up to be a reverse mentor. It's a big ask of people. But their willingness to share their stories and their experiences helped develop our collective and individual understanding and awareness as a leadership group. Every one of our core leadership group had a reverse mentor, had at least one reverse mentor. In many cases, we had several. And it was such a success as it developed within the firm that quickly we had to spread it to the leadership roles right throughout the global organization. Our affinity networks also played a critical role in these exchanges and dialogues. However, what we also saw is they can't become isolated from the leadership. I have seen situations where that isolation or a lack of engagement with leadership can lead to a real breakdown and a divide between leadership and those affinity groups, and can build an element of mistrust that takes time to repair. So that active listening and engagement of leaders is absolutely critical if the full collaborative benefits are to be realized. Our reverse mentoring schemes and the affinity networks also created a platform for partnership with our clients and our suppliers and our peers in the legal industry. This was, again, incredibly valuable opportunities for myself and other leaders within the firm to listen, to learn, and to share experiences. And I think, as everybody appreciates, the voice of the client or the customer is an incredibly powerful motivator for change within an organization. And on the topic of partnerships and collaborations, this is a very personal experience from me. I think active participation with organizations such as the 30% Club, Valuable 500 and Out Leadership also helped me develop and broaden my experiences and gave me an opportunity to benefit hugely from the exchanges on ideas of best practice within a community of senior leaders as well. And I think the IOD also provides a forum for similar exchanges. In addition to working with those organizations, I'm also a very strong advocate for bringing in challenge from outside the firm. Successful organizations are really hard to change. They're built on habits and often ideologies which have been established over many, many years. And it takes time to dismantle some of those. Bringing in the insight and expertise of outside organizations to provide the challenges which will accelerate progress proved absolutely critical for us at CC. I saw the beneficial impact on a number of occasions from where we brought in a firm to do an ethical review of our culture within the organization, through to a specific review of our processes and systems around the promotion of partners and the development of our partner pipeline talent going forward. And those are the changes that we've identified from those are now being implemented within the firm. The other major accelerator of change was embracing the power of data. And I know Zara will talk more about this in the session later on. Obviously, we had to be careful and sensitive to some of the challenges about self-identification, data privacy laws, and also build trust about how that data was going to be used within the firm. But actually, discussions on those topics themselves actually provided a platform for further engagement and discussion about how we address some of these issues. But the data was such an important part for us in benchmarking where we stood as we embarked on our journey, on how we developed specific action plans, and obviously how we tracked our progress. Last but by no means least, as part of our campaign and commitment, it was really vital that we established accountability of the leadership group collectively and individually. And of course, the data was so important to doing that. We were the first global law firm to set collective targets on a global and on a regional basis on gender, ethnicity, and LGBTQ+. And we recognized that setting ambitious targets would really galvanize our efforts and help drive change. And each member of our leadership group accepted that they had to have specific individual objectives that were aligned to our ED&I targets and strategy. And we committed also to report internally and externally on the firm's progress against those targets. I could go on about the lots more initiatives that have proved very successful, but I know there'll be lots of topics you'll hear much more about over the course of the afternoon. I think the recommendations in the white paper provide a lot more detail, which I hope will inspire and enable leaders across all businesses, large or small, really to accelerate the sustainable changes, which I think we all know must happen and we want to see. But one final reflection from me, which I think reflects the views of all the commissioners, is that we were united in our belief that the genuine, visible, and consistent commitment of businesses' leadership is an absolutely fundamental factor if we were to successfully pursue the journey that we all want to go on together. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Matthew, for those thoughts about how the most senior in every organization should be so cognizant and leading this debate within their organisations. And so with that, I'd like to invite up our last speaker for today's panel session before we come to a quick-fire Q&A at the end. So Stephanie Boyce, please come up to join us. She is the past president of the Law Society, and we'll tell you more about her role.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. And thank you very much for those of us that don't know who I am. As David said, I'm Stephanie Boyce, and in March 2021, I made history when I became the 177th, the 6th female and the first black, first person of colour to become president of the Law Society of England and Wales in the Law Society's almost 200-year history. And of course, I was pleased to accept the invitation to become part of this commission and to use my experience and position to effect change. So, for those of you not familiar with the Law Society, it is the representative body for over 218,000 solicitors across England and Wales, whose purpose is to be the voice of solicitors, to drive excellence in the profession, and to protect and safeguard the rule of law. So, I took up my role as an office holder of the Law Society in July 2019, first as Deputy Vice President, then Vice President, and became President, as I said, last year. And in doing so, I stand as living testament to the diversity, dynamism, and growing social opportunity in the legal profession. And of course, the presidency has been a great honour, but more importantly, it was a tool to achieve change, a platform to bring about progress in the profession. And while the legal profession has come some way in the pursuit of a diverse and inclusive legal sector, there is a lot more to be done if we are to achieve what we are aiming for, and that is a legal profession that reflects the society it serves. And not just because it's a moral necessity, just as our legal system's international reputation and the reputation of those that practice within it rest in part on ensuring universal access to justice within the United Kingdom. It also rests on ensuring that the legal profession is representative. Because we cannot claim that our legal system is the best it can be when we know that many talented people from non-traditional backgrounds are unable to join or reach the heights of the profession. And of course, there's no one button marked, or any button that one can press, marked make solicitors, barristers, judges, arbitrators diverse. It is a complex issue with many factors, but the first step is identifying the root causes and looking at how we counter them. And so with the pandemic having exacerbated inequalities across the sector, those with disabilities, women, LGBTQ+, Black, Asian and minority ethnic, and those from a low socio-economic background need support more than ever. And as President, I made it my mission to leave the profession more diverse and inclusive than the one I entered. I passionately believe that solicitors, barristers, judges, lawyers need to reflect the society we serve. And that's why I spent my time as President being visible and challenging harmful and reductive attitudes on panels, in speeches, articles, as well as through the resources that were provided. Attitudes like the belief that flexible working is somehow lesser than presenteeism, that blind allocation is unnecessary, and that this whole diversity thing will just sort itself out and doesn't need real commitment and effort from everyone. So the makeup of the solicitor profession in England and Wales has changed over the past 3 decades. Only 709 solicitors were from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background in 1990. Latest statistics from the solicitor profession suggest that just over half of practicing solicitors are the first generation in their family to attend university. 18% of the profession is now from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background. But from a recent report published, the 1% study, just 90 of more than 13,000 partners at major law firms in England and Wales are Black. 17% identify as having a disability or mental health concern, and 2% who identify as LGBT+. Since 1990, women have represented more than 63% of new entrants to the solicitor profession. And today, 53% of practicing solicitors are women, figures which reflect those amongst the wider population. This is better for clients and it's better for new entrants who will see a sector that's open to everyone. However, obstacles remain and are faced by different groups in the legal profession. And there are no broad brush solutions to these challenges, but we are working to understand the different experiences of members of our profession and the role we can play in removing the barriers that do still exist. The Law Society's Race for Inclusion report, published in 2020, showed that in England and Wales, many black, Asian and minority ethnic lawyers experience lower well-being and less career progression and can often face direct discrimination and microaggressions in the workplace. And this contributes to lower retention as people understandably leave workplaces that they do not feel welcome at. So our legal system's international reputation and the reputation of those that practice within it rests in part on ensuring universal access to justice within the United Kingdom, but also in ensuring that the legal profession is representative. We should all be working and supporting our own workplaces, inclusivity and diversity initiatives. A culture, and we heard Matthew talk about this, a culture within a workplace is just as important as recruiting in an inclusive and diverse way. A better culture can be achieved by initiatives such as look at the imagery your business uses, the decor, and pictures in your buildings or on your website. It may reveal assumptions about you or who you employ and who you serve. Consider how you do business with clients or organise social or networking events. Is there a tendency to focus on after-hours drinking or certain kinds of sporting events? Are they more varied or inclusive options that could be considered? Promote diverse role models. They are important in breaking down stereotypes and building inclusion. Ensure you support them too, however, because it can feel risky being in the spotlight or being seen as a token representative for an entire group. Make clear how people can raise concerns about behaviour. Provide and advertise a variety of channels in addition to formal reporting to HR. Example, through employee networks, D&I champions, Speak Up Guardians, regular anonymous surveys or reporting to help overcome fears about raising concerns. Ensure there is a channel for insights and feedback to be heard at senior levels too, so that they can take action to improve culture. Implement reverse mentoring. Provide a channel for two-way conversations between junior and more senior staff. Ensure that there is regular diversity training, which can help raise awareness amongst staff of the experience of others. And questions on staff surveys to monitor views and experiences on these issues, which can provide invaluable data for workplaces. We must all be committed to ensuring our respective professions are as open and welcoming as possible, that there are no hidden barriers that do not allow diverse talent to thrive and progress. There is growing social opportunity in our professions, but more must be done to challenge the stereotypes of what professionals should look like or where they should come from. And of course, we want to show that people from all walks of life and backgrounds can make valuable contributions and achieve success in our professions. So despite the increase in diversity in the legal profession, challenges remain in ensuring equal opportunities and progression and a culture of inclusivity. For example, women make up only 31% of partners in private practice. Meanwhile, 28% of practicing solicitors attended independent or public schools, a far higher proportion than the 7% of the people across England and Wales who attended such schools. And there are also external factors that make it more difficult for aspiring solicitors to enter the profession, such as difficulties in getting access to work experience and a lack of finance or guidance from social or family connections for those from lower socio-economic backgrounds. There is clearly room for improvement. And these obstacles are acknowledged by decision makers, by workplaces, and by the profession. And in the past 5 years, there have been significant improvements in widening the routes of entry to the solicitor profession and providing paid, good quality work experience places to students from disadvantaged backgrounds. And we've worked with law firms and legal business to improve recruitment practices, such as encouraging the use of contextual recruitment. A key part of the Law Society's mission is to ensure that anyone with the necessary skills, knowledge and commitment to become a solicitor is supported, enabled and empowered throughout their career, regardless of age, gender, disability, sexuality, ethnicity or background. I have also been part of the City of London task force commissioned by the UK government to improve socio-economic diversity at senior levels in financial and professional services. And the industry-wide consultation looked at how government, regulators and sector bodies can incentivise employer action. And through roundtables across the country, we heard participants say that career progression in financial and professional services remains a mystery for those without the career capital to navigate the unwritten rules. Participants raised the lack of transparency around progression routes as a barrier to socio-economic diversity at senior levels. And while the policy itself may be clear, there is often a gap between what should happen and what actually happens, which makes it difficult to know how to progress without insider knowledge or career capital. And a lot of this can come down to having senior role models. So senior role models within your organisations play an important role in signalling the possibility of success for others who identify with them based on their shared identity. However, conscious or subconscious efforts to conform to an organisational culture that favours what is considered traditionally middle-class behaviours, example, certain social activities, sports and holidays, can make those from disadvantaged backgrounds harder to identify on that basis. So when these identities are hidden, through choice or otherwise, more junior employees from diverse backgrounds miss out on this valuable connection. So there is plenty for us all to do to continue to harness, to build modern, diverse, strong and inclusive professions for the future, where talent alone is the sole determinant of how successful you can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was an extraordinary speech. And I think one of the I was thinking when you were talking there, I think one of the most telling and damning things from what you were saying is that we can all recognise those behaviours in the organisations that we've been working with, working in over over our careers. I'm sure everyone can see that. And so hugely important to hear that from you as well. So thank you so much. I can ask these guys questions all day long. That's my job. So I want to come straight to the audience. Has anyone got any questions out there? Because I'd rather hear from you guys and get some questions from the audience. Because I can ask Lord Shinkwin about the government. I can ask Stephanie about that amazing statistics about the 1% fund. That is like a handful of partners in thousands. It's incredible. I mean, so I can ask all day long. But I'm going to come to you first. So please, sir.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Can you hear this? Is it going? Yep. Hi, Junaid from the Scottish Asian Business Chamber. Thank you so much for the presentations you guys all gave. It's incredible and fantastic, and I can't wait to get through this entire report. I had a question that related to implementation, and I just wanted to speak on some of the ideas I heard before asking the question, if that's okay. I very much like the approach that the IOD has taken in terms of including business within the discussion. It's very much different to the approach that's been happening in Scotland, which has been more to do with looking at the race equality element, for example, and including equalities organisations to come up with the recommendations, then going to business, which in of itself has a very difficult sort of way of implementing the process. This is under the National Strategy for Economic Transformation, which is almost a Scottish levelling up sort of project. But I also looked to obviously the example of the Welsh Assembly as well, that have committed money towards the implementation of the Race Equality Action Plan. So my question basically surrounds what is the financial backing that the IOD will be giving to the implementation of this to their members, and wider to that, I guess specifically to Lord Shinkwin, would there be a financial backing by government on the implementation of these sort of ideas coming from the Commission? And secondly, how does the IOD seek to implement these commitments considering the environment that we're in right now with the significant amount of business challenges that are here, And how do we get businesses to take this EDI work seriously? So just 2 questions.
Jonathan, would you like to start and then Lord?
So that's, is there any money? And how do we get people to take it seriously? So is there any money from us? No, is the brutal answer. But that's because we're a membership organisation and members pay, it's discretionary amount of money. They don't pay a huge amount of money, but they pay money to this. So what we just do is really put back to our members thoughts that they can implement almost for nothing. I mean, most of these things we're talking about is, of course, there are some things that cost money, but the vast majority of the things we're talking about don't cost money, but they cost attitude. And what we hope to do is, because it doesn't cost money to change your attitude, just costs yourself a bit of self-esteem sometimes to admit I'm wrong, and I've been in that set. You don't need money to change attitudes, you need attitude to change attitudes. So what we hope to do here is by putting things out there to our members, and we do that, and not just our members, but I said before, we have this kind of IOD diaspora of over 70,000 followers, and we'd love to have more on LinkedIn. To say, look, it is possible. This stuff is not that difficult. You just have to commit to doing it, and you have to commit to being wrong. And we've been through that experience ourselves. This isn't exactly the most user-friendly building. So we've had to take a lot of, had to swallow hard, and you can see we're doing a lot on the outside of the building, and we'll be doing things inside the building just to make us a little bit more accessible, if you like. So is there any money? No, but we hope we'll be enablers for change, because this stuff doesn't often cost money, it costs attitude. And the second thing is kind of part of the first, which is by opening up the debate. And this organisation has been around, and you can see around the walls here. We've been around. This is a very kind of male, pale, stale environment we're sitting in here. It used to be a military club. We unfortunately, by the lease we have, we're duty-bound to keep some of these things for posterity. But the IOD has changed. If you look at the website, you look at this report, you look at the people in the IOD, you look at around the United Kingdom at our chairs and our volunteers across the UK, we've really focused very hard and paid a lot of attention to equality, diversity, and inclusion. Have we got it right? No. We've got a long way to go. Do we get pilloried? Yeah, we do. But are we going to try? Yes, we are. And I think this is the point about, it's got to come from the top. And I am committed to doing something. I'm merely a custodian, a kind of trustee of this building of the IOD. It's been around since 1903, got its Royal Charter in 1906. We're a distributed organisation. This happens to be our London hub. We have 53 different places across the UK in our branches where we hope we can make an impact locally. So we would really almost put it back to our members and say, look, we're here to help, we're here to try and inspire, but get with the programme.
Lord Shimgreen, obviously the question's about money, but if I could add my 2 cents as well. What guarantee do we have that this government has any commitment towards diversity whatsoever?
I think that's a very good point. I think it goes back to a point that Jonathan's just made about the importance of enabling. I see government not so much as providing financial backing, but facilitating, getting behind the excellent ideas in both this white paper and also the policy white paper that will be published shortly, and ensuring that business knows that change can happen if, for example, it follows these recommendations. But at the moment, to come back to your question, Dan, I fear that government is setting up a roadblock to reform. And that is quite frightening, which is why I said, please push back. Keep faith with what the IOD is advocating. Keep faith with people of protected characteristics so that we can progress towards equality.
I'm very conscious we're going to be running out of time very soon, and everyone's going to be around all day, and we've got the round tables to discuss this as well. So do approach them individually, please, because we've got phenomenal speakers here. But before I let you guys go, I just want to talk about the law profession, because we've got 2 very senior law representatives here. You talk about, and I talk to law firms that have been for many years about the work they do. And it always seems incredible. Like they've got this and they've got that, and all the stuff you talked about. Now, it's true, it's fantastic. You have it. And then you come to the statistic of a handful of black partners in a profession or in partnerships of thousands and thousands and thousands. Why is it so slow? Why are we not seeing more change yet from all the stuff that has been going on, the stuff we know about, Clifford Chance, Linklaters, you talk to them, they've all had these schemes up and running. It should have changed by now, surely.
I think the answer is yes, it should. And the change isn't moving as quickly as I think we all would like it to see change. There are some significant systemic issues that go back to the way law firms are structured and have been structured for many years. I mentioned how challenging it is to bring about change sometimes in those organisations. But I do think the pace of change is accelerating dramatically now. Stephanie, you talked about that over the course of the year. I think there is, across the profession, I think there is, and you'd expect it in a profession that is built on equality and access to justice, as Stephanie mentioned. You'd expect that to be the case, but I think there is a real momentum building, and we think we will see dramatic change over the next few years. But the pace has been too slow, and a lot of that has been the challenge of addressing the systemic issues within a partnership structure within law firms, which has been challenging. And just take some examples. The partnership processes have been sort of cast and developed over many years, and they really need to be radically transformed to increase the access, create the role models, help build the pipeline, as I mentioned earlier on. That needs a very intentional intervention within the firms, and it's happening. But there are a combination, as Stephanie said, a combination of factors which really need to be challenged to accelerate the pace of change. But I think everybody in the profession recognises that the pace of change is not as quick as it should be. But I think there is a united commitment to continue to drive and accelerate that change now.
Stephanie, can you see that, you're talking about the next few years? I mean, it might be a generation, I suppose. That's about, it could be, because hopefully the next generation has very different views from certainly some of the views you hear in the older management crowd. But so, are you convinced the pipeline is coming through and we're seeing the change happening?
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen a groundswell of change over the last, since the abhorrent events around the death of George Floyd in the USA, since the subsequent Black Lives Matter. We've seen a number of initiatives. But even before that, the legal profession were doing lots of initiatives. But what we have to ensure is that people know about those initiatives, because, we still do a lot of work that is very London-centric. We have to ensure that there are lots of myths around the profession as well. So one of my things is advocating about getting law taught in schools, and primarily from two aspects. Around access to justice, because we still have a huge majority of our adult population who do not recognise when they have a legal issue. And of course, that issue then goes on to spiral. And for those of you who've heard me speak before, my thing is, what is the point of legal rights if we don't know what those rights are in the first place? And we don't even know when those rights are being taken away. So from an access to justice point of view, but also from a social mobility aspect, the law touches every part of our lives. We can't escape it. So the question that I ask government all the time is, why are we not teaching our children about the law? But if we start to teach our children as young as possible about the law in school, as they make their way through the educational system, they start to think about those stepping stones, the roadmap that they have to lay. It starts to demystify some of those myths, that the law, the legal profession is an elitist profession. I don't belong there. I was told, I don't look like a solicitor, you don't sound like a solicitor, you come from a low socioeconomic background, you will not make it as a solicitor. We need to start dismantling some of those myths that keeps talent out of this profession. So going back to the point around teaching law in schools, is that as our children make their way through the educational system, they start to think about a career in law, the stepping stones, the GCSEs, the A-levels, and the networks that we know that all-important mentorship, sponsorship, work experience is drawn from. And if you don't have that social capital, I didn't know about, the power of networks until second year at university. We also know the legal profession has a particular liking, if you like, for certain universities. So we start to get our children to think about those all-important things that may affect their ability to break into the profession. And that is how we start to break down some of these barriers, some of these myths. Because talent, diverse talent, is found everywhere and anywhere. And also, my perspective, my last comment, is that not only is it driven from top-bottom, but one of the things we also saw is that it's also driven from the bottom up. People want change. They want to see, and our clients have a responsibility as well, they want to see that the professions, whether that's the legal profession, other professions, they want to see that it's representative of the society that we all seek to serve. And as I say, that's a moral imperative, a responsibility of us all.
Yeah, I was talking to a large accounting firm who said this was during the period where Rees-Mogg was talking about maybe removing some of the rules around gender pay to reporting. These went away, by the way, but they were apparently on the table, according to our reporting anyway. And he said, we can't do that. We will do it anyway because our workforce requires us to do all these things. So we've got a young, mid-30s, young 30s workforce, and they will demand we do this anyway, whatever the government does. So they're pushing in the wrong direction on this. And I think when we're talking about the law profession is equally true of so many different professions, journalism included, absolutely. I know some chaps in the VC world who are making their way as the first black-led VCs. And again, it's a white industry, and all that needs to be happening. And figureheads and spokespeople, as you said, so important. But we can talk all day about this, and we will do for the rest of the day, hopefully. So with that, I'd like to thank you so much to our panel, and come have some coffees and have a break. Thanks so much.